It is 6 o'clock. We will call the meeting to order and do roll call. Do you want to start, Craig, and we'll go around?
Sure. Craig Huckbeater, Mount High School.
Caitlin Benson.
Hello. Kelly Tarbell.
Jen.
Dave Marshall. Lane Millington.
Deb Higuera. Cheryl Hannah. Hello. And on Zoom, it's Maria and Julie. And is that it? All right, perfect.
Thank you.
Approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions, Lane, that I don't know about?
I had one.
Yeah. Was that Julie?
Yeah. Lane, when we met with TRSU, they requested that we add a discussion about policy governance.
It's
on here.
Oh, it is? I didn't.
Yeah. She updated it within the time frame.
The agenda, do you know when I just want to make sure then that I'm looking at the right agenda, which.
It should be under new business number 9.
Huh.
The date should say December 18th.
Yeah.
She updated the whole agenda.
Okay.
Let me send you the.
New business.
And then part A is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think I was looking at an old agenda. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so.
I don't know if it needs to be an agenda item, but at our staff negotiations, we discussed whether we needed to have the option of having an alternative board member. Just since there are just 2 of us there, if one of us couldn't make it, then we wouldn't have a quorum.
I think that is the filling out the chart on the back that now that we have a full board, we can get to, Dave.
Okay.
It's been the lack of board members that's made it hard, so thank you, yes.
Okay.
All right, and I think we can do that under new business. We have the election of the TRSU board rep. And then down policy committee, facilities committee, can we add it just there to update? I thought we had it on there. It might have gotten funky, but
Just
yeah.
need a motion.
You want to make that motion, Dave, to
Sure.
update?
Move that under new business, we have the item update our committee membership.
Perfect, thank you. Somebody want to second the motion? I did that. Thank you. Aye. All those in favor of updating our committee chart? Anybody opposed? All right, we will do that under new business. Thank you. Approval of meeting minutes from November 13th, which was our regular meeting.
Hey, Kelly, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Lane, since you're not getting notifications from the waiting room, if you open your participant panel, it should open up next to the Zoom thumbnails and you'll be able to see them.
Gotcha.
I'll figure out why you're not getting notification too.
All right. Any discussion about the meeting minutes? Do you want to make a motion to approve them as written?
So moved.
Second? Second. Thank you. All those in favor of approving the November 13th, 2024 regular meeting minutes?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Perfect, thank you. Communication, board comments? Yeah. All right, public comments. I'm here.
Thanks for coming.
Superintendent's report.
Actually, a couple of kind of nuts and bolts to go through. As part of kind of reviewing safety protocols, earlier in the month, we spent some time as an administrative team and kind of did a little mini lesson on options-based drills for the students and expectations for this year. So that's in place. If they haven't already, they'll be doing one option-based drill where the students just kind of talk about it with the teachers, what they do. And then the second one will be a little bit more active in terms of trying to acting out, what you should do when there's a fire drill, what should you do if there's somebody in the building that you're trying to stay away from, those sorts of things. The discussions that we've been having with the district leadership team, we're starting to take a look at next year and realizing that we need a bit of a teacher leader hierarchy within the district so that as we're doing work on curriculum, we have enough people that can actually get into the classrooms and help coach and make sure that everybody is on the same page in terms of what they're working on in terms of the ELA and the mathematics. So that's a discussion that's been ongoing. We have also talked about, especially with some of the teacher groups, the need for a little bit of extra professional development time for next year if they're going to be able to successfully be able to carry out the curriculum work. So we're looking at potentially having a half day every month to allow for that. And that would be a temporary thing. It would be for a year or two until we get the work done. It's something when the open forums happen over the course of the next month, I'll be talking to the community members there about gauge their feelings on it. One of the things that we'll be looking at a little bit later with the administrative team is the amount of instructional time, learning time that's allocated to the students at both the elementaries and at the high school, because that's kind of the biggest indicator of how the students perform, how much time they are spending with a quality teacher. Personnel changes that we've had, Kelly English, who I hated to lose, has taken over the position of the after school program director, and she's been fantastic. We actually kind of asked her because we had a viable candidate, but I think Kelly's skill set's a better fit, and so she seems to be enjoying that right now. Emma, we'll talk a little bit about this when we get to the curriculum report. Emma has taken over the principalship of Catfish at this point in time, and they are actually interviewing 2 curriculum director candidates tonight. I think we should have just wrapped up the second one. So hopefully we'll have some news on that front before we go off to the holiday vacation here. Negotiations is probably the last piece. Both parties, the support staff from Ludlow-Mount Holly and the teachers associations have met in negotiations with the district team. It was basically just to set ground rules and to develop times to meet to get through the process. The next meeting for the teachers is January 7th, and the next meeting for the support staff, the LMH support staff, will be January 14th. That's about it, unless there's questions.
I had one, but it's fallen out of my head, so it'll come back.
That's why I talk fast, because
Can't ask a question.
there is a hand up. Julie, it's got a hand up.
Hi, thank you. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. I had a couple of questions based on your remarks. The first was, at the beginning, you said that you were looking for more support, I guess, in the teacher personnel hierarchy. Can you say what you meant by that? Are you looking to build in like an administrative layer, or what did that mean? So
with stipends, the current model, there are some teacher leaders throughout the district, especially like at the high school, you've got your department heads. But what was happening when I was having a couple of conversations with Emma, and then we talked with the district leadership team, is you basically had Emma and a few people trying to get around to all the teachers in the district to make sure that, they're getting the support they need, they're getting the coaching they need. People are checking in with them just to make sure that they're staying the course in terms of the work. And to be able to get around to all those folks to give them the support they need, it's just not possible. And so what we're looking is possibly, a small to middling stipend for a group or a layer of what we call teacher leaders that are within the buildings that have a bit more expertise in the areas that we're training the other teachers on who can actually perform that function. Because there's a lot of good work that's going on, but to really have an impact on student performance, the changes have got to occur in the classroom, right? Something's got to change in the classroom for there to be a change in terms of student performance. And the only way that's going to happen is if we're providing the support and the coaching that folks need to be able to make it happen. So.
Thank you. That's helpful. And then my second question was, I was reading, I just happened to read the Mountain Holly Chit Chat, and there was a excerpt or a summary of your visit to the Rotary group in Ludlow. And it seemed like there was some lively discussion about, the future of the district and the schools and sort of, improvement ideas. And I was just curious if you could give us a little bit of insight into the sorts of things you are out in the community building consensus around. That would be really interesting to hear. I appreciate your outreach in the community, and it would be interesting for, I think, the board to have some insight into, the things you're trying to build community support around.
Yeah, no, I'm actually saddened by the social media posts because there's a lot of people out there saying that I'm trying to force consolidation within the district and things like that, and that is not true. What I am doing is being strategic about what it looks like is coming down from the state, and just letting people know that that looks like the push that the state is making, so that people can be prepared. So I'm not in agreement. I'm not pushing anything. I'm just doing my function of, taking a look at things and saying, hey, this might be happening soon, and what the percent chance is that it's going to happen, which is relatively high at this point in time. Right. And the two things that we talked about are the same things that we've talked about in a bunch of the open forums. It's the idea that the only real levers the state has to pull, if it's going to try to lower property taxes for folks, is staff, right? Because one of the things that they were looking at with the commission was student to staff ratios, and looking at the research to say, okay, how many, what should those ratios be, if we're going to have effective learning go on? And then the second thing that they've been looking at in depth was research on school size. And so both of those would lead somebody to believe that, yeah, it's looking like their discussions are going to be around, what they call right-sizing staff, and maybe mandating that, as well as potentially mandating consolidation of schools. So those are the discussions in the commission. It was interesting. My understanding is they put in the report, they had a preliminary report that was due December 15th, and they didn't really put any recommendations.
Did AOE?
The commission, yeah.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Which was odd. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that background. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right.
I did have one quick question. For Lane, can you qualify when you say what's coming down from the state fairly soon? You mean soon as in 6 months, 1 year, 5 years?
There are actually two pieces, and we'll talk about the federal side of things when we get into the budget discussion. So not potentially impacting next school year, but the school year after. Because next school year, they're supposed to be presenting the final report to the legislature so that they have it in front of them to try to make decisions about how to improve, taxes in Vermont for the taxpayers.
Got it. Thank you.
Questions? Thoughtful questions.
Any other? Principal's report.
Oh, so
You're gonna project it, yeah.
I am going to try and do that. Give me just a second. I have the Zoom coming up and like walking. So Craig and I talked about, after our last meeting, we realized that we're presenting the same information, but in a completely different format. So we decided to try something new. So whether you like it or not, let us know. We can keep doing it in this format, or we can change again. So we put together just a quick little slideshow to kind of keep us focused and us, we always share the same information, but we do it in a little bit different way. So this maybe will help us systematize a little bit and,
And Deb made a really good point about when we have board members zooming in, this might make it a little more easy for them to access materials
Right.
that we're referring to.
and we should have gotten it to you earlier, but winter concert and life happening in
Week before
December.
holiday break. Yeah, I get it, trust me.
So here we go. Couple of things we're gonna talk about tonight. We made a commitment to sharing data with you, so we have some enrollment data, we have some community connection, principal report information, and then some data to share with you. I have data around attendance, discipline, and at our last meeting, there was some discussion around single grade versus multi-grade. So I did do a parent survey during conferences, and one of the questions we asked on that survey was around that data. So I'll share that information with you. And also, there was a question of what do teachers think. So I also polled our teachers and got their feedback. So here we go. Here is our current enrollment and our projected enrollment. These counts do include our students in the intensive needs program. We're down slightly. We've had some move-ins, some move-outs, some families who registered and wanted to be here as tuition students, but then decided to homeschool. So we've had some movement in that capacity. Our community connections, our PTG purchased some brand new sleds for us. They came in the day after we came back from Thanksgiving break, 30 brand new sleds. Kids are having a blast sledding out back. PTG also sponsored the Junkman Band Assembly yesterday afternoon. The performance was all around recycled materials, and then all of the students got to participate if they chose to in doing some drumming with the Junkman. And they had a blast doing that. On Friday, PTG is also sponsoring a trip to the movie theater in Springfield. We're going to see The Grinch. So we're excited about that. It is also Grinch Color Day. So hopefully all of our kids will wear green. And when we go to see The Grinch, we'll all look Grinchy.
And in Springfield, you'll blend right in with all of us wearing our green.
So we're excited about that. Along with local sponsors, our PTG has also helped cover the cost of our winter sports program. And here's Mary Davis, Realtor, who is one of our main contributors, presenting us with a check. It happened to be like the one warm day that we had this past fall. Ted is doing skateboarding in PE, and the kids are really excited and watching them ride around the gym, and some of the tricks and stunts that they're doing are pretty incredible. I think if I got on a skateboard, I would break my neck, but that's off to Ted. Thanks, Ted, for doing that. We're ready to go with the winter sports program. We're just waiting for some equipment to come in because Chemo ran out of rentals again this year, but they're working with local businesses to make sure all of our kids have the equipment that they need. And we had our winter holiday concert last week, and the kids did an excellent job as always. As a principal, you always sit in the hallway and you listen and you're like, oh, it's never gonna work. And then all of a sudden it does. So we're pretty proud of our kids there. This is attendance data. You can see past years, and currently that date was as of last week, prior to our board meeting. We're currently at 97.01% data. Again, it's only the first trimester. We'll see what the second two trimesters hold for us.
Ooh, do you know what the national average is about?
I don't know what the national average is.
Somewhere in the 60s. In terms of percentage, so it's really good.
So we've been collecting some discipline data. At the time I put this report together, you can kind of see grade levels that are reporting some behaviors and some where discipline issues seem to be. These are the locations. Major versus minor. And again, when I talk about that minor, I did have a slide that talked about what that minor behavior was, but there was some student data, so I chose not to include that. Our biggest behavior is defiance and refusal. So kids refusing to the work or being defiant to an adult. But that's pretty typical in a school, and that's always been the case as long as I've been in high school. So something to think about and something to work on as we move forward. I said that I had put a survey out. We had 15 teachers respond. It went out to all classroom teachers, special educators, our specials teachers, so art, music, PE, and this was their response, single grade versus multi-grade. And this is parent preference on the parental data. It wasn't an online form, it was a handwritten form, and they were given two choices, single grade or multi-grade, but then parents wrote that in some cases they had no preference. And so you can kind of see that this is a little bit different than what our teachers have found. But what I found really interesting when collecting this data was the comments from families. Not all families commented, but these were the comments that we had. You know, children never benefited from multi-age, it depends. So I'll give you just a moment to read through those.
I think for the first time, my daughter, who's in the second grade, actually said to me, her class is so big, she gets so distracted that she can't focus.
That's good feedback for us to have, because they do have a big class. Are we set with this one? Ready to move on?
Deb, I had a question about the respondent rate.
Sure.
It looked like 12 families out of how many potential respondents?
So we have a total of 79 students. Family-wise, I want to say we have about 50 families. So not a huge response rate. I am going to send the survey out again to see if we can get additional feedback.
Did you have 100% response on the staff side, though? That seemed pretty high to me.
We had about 100% of the staff reply.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Craig?
All right. So here is the current enrollment for Mount Holly on the left-hand column. So speaks for itself, I think. Total enrollment right now is 99. And then as we look to the projections for next year, the big change is that sixth grade class of 22 will be graduating. So that's gonna drop our enrollments by about 10. You wanna go back?
I was just seeing it looks like a lot of potential pre-K.
Yeah, but that's split between the threes and the fours. So, and typically, you know, like right now, we're projecting for 9 for kindergarten, but we always pick up a couple that are not in our preschool, so that we're not sure if they're coming, but that's a very, very routine kind of a outcome.
Next slide.
Any questions about enrollment? Okay.
One of the question about, can you say how many teachers, regular teachers do you have, you know, non-special ed teachers?
Classroom teachers?
Well, are there other, but other than special ed, are there other non-classroom teachers?
PE.
Yeah. No, you're right. No, I understand that, not the music and PE and, right.
Yeah, our library.
So how many classroom teachers?
So right now we have a preschool teacher, kindergarten teacher, then we have 2 1-2s, 2 3-4s, and 2 5/6s, so 8 classroom teachers.
And in Ludlow,
We have 6 teachers,
um,
6 classroom teachers.
thank you.
Okay. So skateboarding has also been a big hit in Mount Holly. The program includes all of the equipment, the teacher training, the curriculum, and it is really amazing to see what they can do already. It's just from day one, just a couple days in, it's just incredible how quickly they're learning, and they are very excited about it. For winter sports, PTG is covering all of the fees for students for the program, and Open Door Rentals is covering all of the equipment rental costs. So big thank you to all of the support we're getting. The crawl space project is complete. That entire space is dry and warm, and it seems to be making a difference throughout the school. The roof repairs are complete, so there are no longer any leaks, and the cost came in under the estimate that we were expecting. And the furnace installation is complete, and the system is up and running efficiently. It's noticeably more comfortable and warm in the building, and we're going after the break. We're actually going to get some training on how to make room by room adjustments, because there are actually some places in the school where people feel it's almost too warm. So it's a really nice set of infrastructure improvements, and we're really pleased. On the bus driver front, the person who we thought was getting very close, he has his CDL and was very close to getting his bus endorsement, has decided to go in a different direction. And concurrent with that decision, our bus driver, who was our bus driver for several years, Dennis Montreux, is now working full-time for the town of Mount Holly on the road crew, and has expressed interest in coming back to drive the bus for us if the town of Mount Holly is able to, see if that would work on their end. So one key thing we would have to do is, if we're having a snowy morning and Dennis was needed to plow, for example, we might have a 2-hour delay without bus service. But the upside would be the vast majority of days we would be able to regain bus service. And so I've had a little bit of a discussion with Bovee about it, and he was going to check to see if the town would like me to come to a meeting to talk to them, or if that's something they could just discuss internally. So I should hear back from him in the next couple of days. And I just wanted to kind of update you all to see if you had any feedback about that.
Instead of doing a 2-hour delay, because I know in Ludlow, Mr. Dean, we don't always have bus service due to his circumstances. And so we still open at the same time. We just drop the kids, parents just drop the kids off.
Oh, sure. Yeah, if it's a weather day and we can get to school at 8, we would definitely do that.
So you're just saying like.
If it was extreme weather,
Okay.
and if it was a wet, there was snow, and I think the idea is that Dennis's town job would come first, because they're really,
Right, I understand. I misunderstood. I just thought you were just going to do a 2-hour delay every time he couldn't drive the bus. And I was like,
No.
that's not going to work. So good.
No, right, very good
Okay, I
clarification.
misunderstood. Sorry.
Yeah, so if we had, whether there was a 2-hour delay or a normal start, if he's needed to plow, he would do that. That would be the priority, and then those days would be bus service. But I don't think it would be that many days.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
I think it would be important to really make sure all of the bases are covered, but also, I know Jen's asking a clarifying question, but I wouldn't want the TRSU decisions about snow days and delays to be made based on a bus driver in Mount Holly. I think it would have to be we're doing whatever is right for the school district.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately today we can't have a bus.
Totally.
I just think our needs need to come as our priority and the town's needs need to be their priority, and that one decision shouldn't affect the other.
Yeah, I agree with that. This is really a way to get bus service most of the time.
Right.
And then occasionally because of the weather, the plowing takes forever. We just have that understanding. But absolutely, we would be making the snow day or delay decisions the same way we always have. Wouldn't be contingent on bus availability.
So would he be an employee? Would we be like a joint employer with the town, or would he be an employee of this school district, or like what would the bus driving work be like overtime for his town employment?
No,
Separate jobs.
They'd be two separate jobs, Julie. So he's currently a full-time employee with the town. I think he works something like 5 a.m. till 1. And then our contract for the bus is a minimum 2 hour per run. Doesn't really take that long, but that's just how the master agreement works, so that you can actually attract a bus driver. And so that would be a totally separate contract that he would have with LMH. And then what I'm saying about, I just don't want the town to feel like they're going to be caught short when they need their drivers out plowing. So we would defer when they need him to plow, he would plow, and we would get a huge increase in our bus service. It wouldn't be perfect, but it would be largely very workable.
But if his schedule is 5 to 1 with the town, doesn't that mean he would have to do the driving duties right in the middle of his town employment?
Right, and he would then work a little later. So
I see.
Of being done at 1, in effect, it really only takes about an hour to do the whole thing with the pre-route inspection, the running the route itself on both sides of town, and coming back and doing all the checking checklists at the end at post route, those kind of responsibilities. So it's really very workable. It just means he'd be working a 9-hour day instead of an 8-hour day. And only, the hours would stay the same for the town. They would just shift a little bit, and then he'd be able to fit us in.
Great. Thank you for explaining that. And I really appreciate the creativity. It would be great to get a bus driver back in the district.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. I appreciate it. We're really trying hard. It's very hard to find folks for a lot of these positions.
And my only other comment on it is if they're willing to do it, I think it's wonderful. I think they would have question though. I mean, there are other, I might happen to know that there are other situations when working for the town that aren't just plowing, that happen at specific times where everybody is needed on board to do
Something.
XYZ project. And so I just think all of this needs to be really worked out so we don't burn any bridges with others, community members, townspeopeople, town employees, select board, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was using the plowing as an example that most people would sit and think, okay, that's an obvious one. I agree with you, Kelly. There may be other times that something has to happen when we normally have a route. And I think there again, the understanding would be the town job comes first because he's their full-time employee.
Right.
It's just, helping us when he can. That makes sense. And then the big news I have is Zoe Trimbley becoming our long-term 5-6 teacher. Really excited about Zoe stepping into this role. She's got over 10 years experience in Two Rivers. She's enrolled in an accelerated teacher certification program. She has experience in training in all 3 of our curricula. And she has a strong partnership with Lindsay Ganassi, who's going to provide mentoring and support. And she has excellent relationships and rapport with the 5-6 students and families. great fit.
Excellent.
Yeah. Next slide, unless you guys have questions. Okay, so I did not do a family survey about single grade versus multi-grade. The consensus among our staff is that while we see a lot of benefits to multi-age, the decision to do that was back before we had two of our major curricula, ruler and especially EL for literacy. And so going back to single grade is what the staff are in favor of. There is, we think, opportunity to keep some of the really positive aspects of multi-grade that we've learned about by doing this for the last several years. So keeping our grade level structure where pre-K and K are a team of teachers and the kids do things together. Same thing with our 1-2 team, our 3-4 team, our 5-6 team. So there would still be a lot of collaboration. We have data teams, and other examples that people gave were, you know, when older kids are mixed with younger kids in a single cohort, they can really model behavior and expectations that kind of lift everyone. So continuing to have opportunities like that across the teams so that we can do things like reading buddies and other like cross-grade charter making for ruler, things like that, so that we don't lose those kind of positive aspects of multi-grade. But the sequence of the curriculum for EL is really, do you guys remember that? Like, you know, if you have a kindergarten group that's coming into first grade and you're on a cycle where you're doing second grade modules, that's a big jump. Or same thing with you know, all the way up through. So that was the upshot in terms of where we're landing in terms of multi-grade versus single grade. The one area that was a little interesting is in the upper grades. You know, over in Chester, they've been doing a 5-6 combination for many years, and it's not because of numbers. There are some developmental advantages at that level, and so, you know, there might, and there's, you know, being able to balance needs across the cohorts in that process of cohort configuration that we do every spring. That was one thing. So there, you know, you could see a scenario where 5-6 might work closely together. All right. There are no questions about that topic. I'll jump into discipline. So we had 14 to date, 14 incidents, 13 were minor, 1 major, so the major is just 7% total. The left column is just the grade level that the incidents occurred at. 10 in the 6th grade, 2 in the 2nd grade, 1 in the 5th, and 1 in kindergarten. This column to the right is not connected to the column on the left. So this is just purely location. So it wasn't that the you know, those 7 that happened in the classroom are related to the 10. The 10 that happened in the 6th grade. 4 happened at recess, 1 on the bus on a trip, 1 at lunch, and 1 during the parent meeting. Just
Shocked me.
an odd one, yeah. I don't want to go. Yeah, so not a lot in the way of disciplinary challenges. Questions on that one? And then as far as attendance, also by Lane's kind of national averages, these are pretty strong percentages. You can see there's an outlier there in 21, 22. I don't really remember what happened.
It was COVID.
Well, COVID was 1920 with the spring, where
Yeah, but the next year we came back
and did
in
one.
all the wonkiness.
But that was 2021, which is 93.69. It's the year after that. I thought when I first saw it, I had the exact same.
Well, everyone wore
It was
masks.
everyone,
in
right,
2020,
and then we
we're
all got
still-
sick,
and then
right.
21, 22.
We took our
were
mask
still-
off and
yeah.
we all,
But
yeah,
then people were still like not going to school with runny nose.
Right.
Yeah,
you
and
have
5
still, like-
days.
Right.
Oh, and all
You had a
that
lot
business.
Mount Holly had a lot of students online in 2021.
2020 and 21.
Yeah.
I think Mary L's on to the 21, 22.
yeah. I think it was after we took our masks off
Masks
and
off.
we
People
all
sick.
got re-sick again.
Yeah.
We had to build our immunity.
And so-
Right.
So they were fine.
Yeah. And so then the reason that there's 2 items for 24, 25, so that's our current year to date. So 94.62% present. In the year that we're in, we're able to disaggregate excused from unexcused. And I thought that was pretty interesting because that 4.4 is legitimate. Like, kids are sick, they've gone to the doctor, they're like, their car broke down or something that was a legitimate excuse. So the rate of unexcused absence is quite low. So
Can you,
I'm working with, well, we're both working with Rob to see how we can keep this capacity. You know, it would be nice if Power School would just automatically do it for us. I don't know if it can. That's what we're exploring. But at the very least, I'll keep this now. And I'll keep a separate database and that will be able to do that as well. So we can then see the unexcused versus excused over a multi-year.
is it accurate that excused and unexcused are, in my experience, excused is a parent called in and said, my kid will not be there. Unexcused is a parent did not call in. So
A
a
little
parent
bit.
can call in and say, my kid has a hangnail and won't be into school today, and it still
That's
gets
not
excused, correct?
No,
Okay.
no. So, excused would be a real health issue, a transportation issue. That's really it. If you just say, she's just not coming, she doesn't feel like it,
Right,
that's not excused.
okay.
And then, we don't ask for a doctor's note routinely, but if it's starting getting to be a lot of excused absences and it's starting to have an impact on the student's learning, then we'll get into a more detailed plan around how to prove that. And then, of course, anything that's unexcused is covered by our truancy policy, where we have to do 5-day letters, 10-day letters, working service plans, all of that. Working with mental health, DCF, all of those impactful strategies.
Any questions for Deb or Craig?
Yeah, your pattern, which kind of makes sense, is the discipline problems in both schools are 5 cents. So, observation. As minimal as that.
All right, curriculum report? Where's Julie?
Yeah,
There, no.
No, I can talk a little bit about that. That's-
Okay.
With Emma moving over, what's happened, and Julie was actually great. We sat down a morning a week or 2 back, and she helped kind of take a look at all the parts and pieces that Emma had up and running, which was a tremendous amount. And we kind of split them up in terms of who had the most knowledge of it, and then send out a communication, say, hey, if you need work or you need help or you need an answer about this part of the curriculum work, this is who you talk to. The goal is to try to get somebody in place as quickly as possible. And I was just checking my email. They have made a recommendation for the candidates tonight. So I will try to do the reference checks tomorrow, and if everything looks out, I'll probably be making a recommendation on Friday. So we could have somebody in place as soon as right after vacation. In the interim, if that doesn't work out, then we will have to continue what we can with the people that we have, and I'll try to do a good chunk of it if I can. So that's the curriculum piece for now.
All right, any questions for Lane on that? Tara, it's you.
Okay, actually good news. No real big issues with either one of your schools. They're in pretty good shape for now. Like Craig said, get the roof repaired at Mount Holly, but I think that's something that we should discuss more when the bond issue comes up. It came in under budget, but we still have some issues there that I think we should talk about. So nothing major to report. Good news. Schools are in good shape and moving along.
Thank you. Questions for Todd? Financial update.
Second. Slideshow. Do you have other things?
Yeah, a couple of
Yeah,
things.
actually, while you're doing that, I'll speak to the
Okay.
slideshow.
So you have November, and there's really nothing noteworthy, to talk about as far as the financials, where we expect it to be. I think we spent about 33% of the budget, which is on track. The audit, for some reason, Ludlow-Mount Holly's is the easiest one, and they haven't sent it to me yet, but it's finalized. I'm just waiting for the final copy, and as soon as it does, I'll pop it in the folder, for everybody to see. The other thing I had that, we don't have to do it tonight, but figured we'd get it over with, is announced tuition. It has to be done by January 16th. And so we do have time, but we can either vote on it now or we can wait till next month. Currently, we have announced tuition of $17,000. We kept it low, thinking we would attract students in. That really hasn't happened. The allowable tuition, which is after I do the statistical report to the state, they go through a template and they based on the students that we have and the money that we spent come back with what we could have charged. And so it's at $18,871. So I think my recommendation would be $19,000 based on what I know that's coming up in the budget. So we can either act on that now, or we can wait and do it on the January meeting. I think that's going to be.
Because we have some new people, can I clarify just what I think I know? And then if I'm wrong, you can clarify. So we only get tuition for kids who want to move into our two elementary schools.
They want to come in from outside our district.
Right. So it's very unlikely that we would ever get the 19 or whatever we choose tonight. That has no bearing on what we pay out to the schools where our Black River kids are headed to, right?
Unrelated, all the other schools are doing this.
Right.
Which is a challenge because by the time that I get that information in, the timing is,
So do we want to make a motion to approve Cheryl's recommendation for 19 even? Is that what you said?
So I guess, so who actually pays this?
anybody coming in from outside our Ludlow-Mount area.
And is anybody paying it now?
Yes.
Or is that the family? I mean, the parent, the family pays? Is that the way it works? Or is a district paying?
In this situation, a district's paying.
So through lottery school choice.
So we, for the lottery kids, we do half of the meal.
Gotcha.
So I'll move we accept that recommendation.
Second. Any discussion about the 19,000 tuition? We can't see hands, so can you just verify that nobody's raising a hand on your end?
Yeah, I didn't see one go up.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Can the people online say if they're opposed because we can't see you at the moment?
I support the motion. This is Julie.
Thank you, Julie. And Maria, I think you're online too, Sue?
Yes, I support it as well.
Thank you. All right. And me, Katie, yep, sorry.
I support.
Thank you.
All right, great, thank you.
I just, because we don't have a note taker and I want everything to be official, we're good. Okay. Oh, you're still going, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Just start. You don't have to discuss the budget if you don't want to. Lane's gonna take that from here.
Don't hate me. It is. So we'll talk about this. The bond discussion piece is kind of wrapped into this as well, in terms of talking about tax rates and things like that. So we'll start kind of in a similar place as we did last time. And that's usually, okay, what's the current financial landscape out there? You know, what are the taxpayers feeling like? What's happened recently that might impact their desire to vote for or against the budget this year? And so folks remember, you know, last year's historic tax increase because of the weighting and the restructuring of the tier one monies that happened because of the legislative act. Right, folks weren't able to pass their budgets. As a matter of fact, most of the districts across the state weren't able to pass their budgets the first time around. This year, they've actually downgraded this a little bit, but I think this is going to be off from what people are really going to see. They're saying that this year's predicted increase is 5.9% on average across the state. I find that hard to believe. They had originally said 7, and now they're saying 5.9. And then the last time that we were here, we talked about the fact that, you know, we've got a new federal administration that's coming in, and there's a lot that was unknown about, you know, what they would be pursuing. We have a pretty good idea of what they're pursuing right now, and so we'll talk a little bit about that because that may have an impact on things as well. So currently, the U.S. Department of Education is not funded for next year. Typically, they vote funding for it prior to Thanksgiving. They have not done that. They've stalled things until the new administration comes on board. And one of the things that the U.S. Department of Education does is it administers a lot of the grant fundings that we receive, like title funds, Americans with Disability and Education Act funds. And usually those funds make up about 10% of a school district's budget. Significantly more if there are a lot of underprivileged students in a district because the funds are designed to primarily help them. So the things that have been discussed in the U.S. House are right here. And so the proposed changes that they've been pulling together is reducing Title I by 25%. Title I funds are used for direct services to students. It's usually the largest chunk of the money that we get. Eliminate completely Title II funding. Title II funding is for professional development of staff and for coaching of staff, things along those lines. Eliminate Title III funding, which we don't really use. That's to support English language learners. They're going to level fund the Individuals with Disability and Education Act money, which primarily impacts special education. They're going to eliminate any funding that goes towards English language learners, helping people whose native language is not English learn English. They're going to eliminate any funding for social emotional learning programming, and then a 70% reduction in any school-based mental health services grants. And so that's what they've got on the agenda. The impact potentially on the district, my sponsor too, is this. If we look just at the title funding, right, we usually receive about $706,000. Based upon those potential cuts, we would see a cut of about $260,000. And so it's a significant chunk. It's over $250,000 if that goes through. When it could happen, I don't know. Depends on what they vote. But it's something just to keep in the back of folks' minds. Questions on this before we move on to kind of more local pieces? And I apologize, I can't see you while I'm presenting if you're on the screen, so I would just say speak up if you've got a question or ideas.
Lane, can you, this is proposed changes.
Yeah,
This
so
is
they're
not
pulling it together to put it in a
happened,
bill.
but it's in process, right? I just want to be clear that that's not a set in stone at the moment.
No, but it seems to go along with the tone and tenor that we're hearing. It does not mean it will pass, but again, keep things on our radar.
When do you think that will be resolved? And will it be before we have to, submit the budget to the voters?
Logically, It wouldn't impact the budget that we're planning now. It would impact the following budget, but sometimes things aren't logical. I'll leave it at that. So, the hope is that, if they were going to make those changes, it'd be 2 years out to give people time to kind of try to accommodate as best they could within, at the state level and at the local level, the changes that they're seeing in the funding.
Okay, so your expectation is not that this will hit the 25-26 school year?
Yeah, but they would be working on this potential legislation during the 25-26 school year that could potentially impact the year after.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
And again, my best knowledge that I've got at this point. Expense changes. So on the left, from 1 to 9, we talked a little bit about the changes from last year's budget to what we were proposing in the November meeting. There have been some changes to those as we come into December. And so the related changes are on the right. So you'll see line 1, right, because the cost of health insurance is going up. We are anticipating a $63,000 increase to cover health insurance for the staff because of the keying error, which happens. We're adding another $3,000 to that. For number 2, NC just means there's no change. You see that $190,000 is for the increase in tuitioning out the 7 to 12 students. Because tuitions are going up, because the cost of schooling is going up, right? That's why our taxes are rising. We're going to have to pay more in tuition. So the estimate is we're going to have to pay another $278,000 on top of the $190,000. Yeah.
So 190 plus 278 or?
Make sure I got it from my understanding, it's 190 plus 278.
So, Green Mountain is increasing from 18 to 22,000. Woodstock is increasing from 2273 to $27,000.
Expenses are there. So it's in addition to, so you're going from the 190 to 300.
Right, it is.
It's like a cap or something. So they can announce whatever they want, but then when we go through that process I was talking about after we do the reporting, then they have an allowable. So if they go over or under within, I think it's 3%, then we can either recoup our money or they may bill us for additional money, but there's no cap. We have to pay the announced public school rate. What's capped is anybody that's at an independent or private school, and this year we're paying $19,774 for every independent or private school. My guess is we're going to be $20,000 for next year.
It's actually kind of funny coming down from Central Vermont. The announced tuitions up there, a year or two ago were probably in the 22 range. So my guess is they're probably up in the 24, 25 by now. And it's going to continue to climb until they get the education funding system straightened out in the state. In terms of the assessment that comes from the TRSU, there's an additional $89,000 predicted for special education costs. No changes in 5 or 6. In 7, we put aside an estimate for where we think negotiations with support staff and the teachers are going to land, because usually negotiations don't wrap up until after the budgets have been decided. So we've got to take our best guess. Taking a look at what's out there and based upon advice from people in the know, we're going to add another $12,900 to that. And then 10 is there were a variety of miscellaneous pieces. Some were additions to the budget, some were subtractions from it, but it added up to an additional $9,000. So you're looking at a total increase of 1.2 million from last year based on these parts and pieces. And we'll talk a little bit in the next slide about what's discretionary and what's not, what's mandatory. So questions on this? I know it's just a lot of numbers, but the basic gist is things are getting more expensive. The other piece that's impacting the budget is last year, there was some surplus money About 500,000 of it was used to subsidize taxes this year. You don't have that to take from reserves again to subsidize for next year. So that means that this is a cliff year we're dealing with. We've got to come up with that 500,000 from somewhere else. So that's incorporated into the regular budget. So that's another impact.
So it's not in the budget, we have to raise it in taxes instead of it being an offset.
Ask for it. So that's it.
How big a surplus have we in the past tried to roll over? That's what I'm asking is, how much of the 181 that's left over would it be prudent to use?
181,000 in terms of what the impact would be on your tax rate this year is maybe a penny or two, based upon the calculations we were looking at.
I mean, I guess I'm asking, is there any reason we shouldn't use it?
Unless you have other needs. And so like we're going to talk about the bond and roofs and things that need to be fixed. Typically the money that's sitting in a reserve fund, you store for those emergencies, and you do have some needs. So this is a place where the board would need to kind of weigh, what could this do for the taxpayers versus what could we expect that we may need next year in terms of facilities repairs, if that makes sense. You've got some facility repairs that are needed to be done at least in one building. I mean, if we prioritize stuff, and Todd should pipe in on this when we get a little bit further along. But given where just the taxes are going to be when you see them in a minute, you're not going to get them on passed. So just some thoughts there. But questions on this? Did this kind of make sense, what we were saying? Right, we took some one-time money, we spent it. Now the district is using that amount that was spent, so we got to make it up somehow if we're going to keep our services as they were. And so your choices, as David is talking about, is right. You can roll it over to subsidize taxes for people for next year. Right, both put it in a reserve fund, or you can do a combination of the two. You could save some in a reserve fund for the rainy day if something happens with facilities, and put some into subsidizing taxes. But again, that amount probably is not going to make much of an impact in terms of people's taxes. All right. So this is the primer. A lot of people know this, but for those that don't, and if anybody is going to watch this on video later, I think it's important to know. So in Vermont, how they calculate your taxes is it's based upon the assessed value of your property, and it's how much you pay for every $100 of value of that property. So I'll give you an example here. So last year, the Ludlow-Mount Holly tax rate was about 167. So that means for every $100 of value of your property, you need to pay $1.67 in taxes. So if your house last year was worth $500,000, then there's 5,000 sets of 100. So you multiply those sets by the 1.67, and your taxes would be about 8,350. That is school taxes, right? The other piece that you pay when you get your tax bill is the town taxes as well. So that does not include the town taxes. We're just looking at the school side of things. So does this make a little bit of sense before we kind of jump into the next?
Hey, Lane.
Yeah.
Katie got kicked out. Can you add her back?
We have to shut things down, but let's see. Stop sharing. It works. Keep our fingers crossed. Yay! Sometimes technology works. It's great. So the proposed budget that you looked at, that we just showed you, right, with those increases over the draft budget that we showed you in November, if we put that into place, what you'd be seeing is a tax rate of $2.02 per $100 of assessed property value. So on that same $500,000 home, instead of the $8,350 from last year, they would be paying $10,100 for next year. So that's an increase of $1,750. So if your property is worth $250,000, all those numbers would be cut in half. If your property is worth $1 million, you'd double them. It's a linear equation there. And so some other things to keep in the back of your mind: if you want to cut 10 cents from the tax rate, you'd have to cut 425,000 from the actual budget. Or the other way of thinking that, every penny is 42,500 for the budget. To get us back to the tax rate that people are paying right now for supporting this year, that $1.67, this district would need to cut 1.48 million just to get it back to where it was last year. The biggest impact on this, and we've talked a little bit about it, it seems to be the free and reduced lunch weighting. It wasn't really a loss of students, but you get extra money if students are in certain categories. That's what the whole weighting study was about. And the changes they made last year, we had a large number of students come off of free and reduced lunch, so we don't get the money from that weighting.
Yeah, and that's due to some of the waivers that were in place during COVID, that they did not renew applications. People didn't have to, they just automatically at least, so that it worked, and now they are actually doing that.
So what's
So they
our,
are. They're not qualified.
what's our current estimated weighted count? Last year was 642, right?
Yep, we're at 618.21. 618.21. And we are currently over the threshold with this current budget by 146.
By how much? Per kid. So this one, you know, we can't do. So we'll talk about, I think the next piece that's really important to understand is there are some things in the budget for next year that are mandatory, right? Right, if health insurance goes up because we have it in the contract with the staff as it should be, we have to pay that. Right, if there are salary increases that we've agreed to in the contracts, those need to be paid. If there are changes in special education, right, we've got to pay those to make sure that those kids are served under federal law. So in terms of discretionary spending, out of that 1.2 million that we talked about a little bit earlier, that's the increase for next year, 230,000 of it is discretionary, right? And so if we were to cut the discretionary spending, because we got to keep the mandatory spending in there, that would get us down to $1.97. So that person with that $500,000 property is looking at a $1,500 increase in their school taxes. So that's what's within our control. The problem that we hit is if we want to cut more than 230,000 from the budget, you're going to impact either staff or programming, right? Because after that 230,483 comes out, what's left is keeping us at the same level of service that we have this year. And none of this, by the way, that's the important piece, includes the money needed for the repairs.
Well, now, as I recall, Cheryl, you had 350,000 in there for the for the maintenance reserve, isn't that right?
What, can you explain how you get to the 230? What are the line items that make that up?
Yeah, let's go back. Good question. Going a little slow, sorry about that. The ones in red on the left-hand side are the discretionary, right? Health insurance we got to pay for. The tuition, if you're tuitioning kids out, you've got that agreement with your community, you have to pay for that increase. The SU assessment is a mandatory property insurance increase. You got to pay it if you want to have that insurance, right? The negotiations with the teachers, that's a must need. The red ones are the ones that are discretionary, right? So we had talked about 2 FTEs, 2 teachers at Ludlow Elementary to kind of equalize, the student to staff ratios and allow them to go to single grade classes. 15,000 to replace some aging technology and 3,000 for a supplemental. I believe that's an ELA program up there.
Tier 3.
Yeah. Quick questions on this before I flip back?
Just a minor question on the property insurance increase. Is our district insured through Visbit?
Yes.
And do you know what percentage increase to the premium the 5% equals?
They're talking about, between a 5 and 6% increase on the base, and then they do the experience rating on top of that.
Okay, thank you.
I think that was due to all the flooding. Yeah, I guess.
Well, Chester had the flooding, and we're working with FEMA, and we have some insurance claim, but we are in there as an SU, not as a school district, so if something happens on that side, it does impact us.
Right. So read the red a couple times. So this is where we can test the community about social media. Let's see what they put on social media tomorrow to see if they state this correctly. So what's on the next slide are some scenarios that we talked about, and Cheryl was awesome in terms of being able to kind of calculate what the tax rates would be under these scenarios. They are not recommendations to the board. The purpose of them is to try to show the magnitude of change in terms of the budget that's required to get tax rates down to probably a level that are palatable. So again, these are not recommendations. This is what we would need to do, the magnitude of what we would need to do to be able to make a significant change in people's tax rates. Okay. So again, we'll check social media tomorrow and see how they remember that piece. So we've got a couple of lines here, and so some of this we've already talked about, and some of it's a little bit different. So the top line there, that's our current budget, right? The tax rate was $1.67 per $100 of assessed value. We're going to use that $500,000 home as our example, because that's about the average between Mount Holly and Ludlow if you average the two together. And then the last column there is the dollar change for people next year if we go through with the scenario. So the current draft budget that we put up there, we said, yeah, that's going to raise taxes up to $202 per $100 of assessed value. That's a 35-cent increase. That $500,000 home would be paying $10,100 in school taxes, and that's a $1,750 increase over what they paid this current year. If we do what we talked about, and dumped in the full cost of the repairs that we connected with, the $1.9 million for the two roofs, the ADA improvements and the efficiency improvements across the two buildings, and we had people pay for it in 1 year, that would get the taxes up to $298, and of course that would be up there for a year. That means that their overall tax rate would go up by $1.31. That $500,000 home next year would be paying $14,900 in taxes, which is a $6,500 increase. The two dots at the bottom, so you see the dollar amounts underneath, that's what the savings would be if we pulled out the discretionary funding. So, right, go from $14,900 to $14,630. It's not a big impact if we pulled out that discretionary funding. If we did those repairs with a 15-year bond at 4%, that's what the cost would be, right? We'd see a 48-cent increase in terms of our tax rates. That $500,000 home would be paying $10,750 in taxes, and that's a $2,400 increase. And again, the double dots are what it would be reduced to if we pulled out the discretionary spending. If we move to one.
Okay, can I ask Cheryl about that one? As I recall, when we did the budget last year, we put in a number and we said that if the bond passes, then we'll use that money to pay the principal and interest on the bond. If it doesn't pass, then we'll use it to do the essential repairs, right? My recollection was there's in the draft you gave us before, there was $350,000 in that capital fund. It seemed like if we did a $2 or $2.5 million bond, that would be more than sufficient to pay the principal and interest on the bond the first year. Is that right? I mean, so I mean, I think that the money for paying the bond is already in the budget, in the base.
Some of our thought process though was there's still additional things that need to be done. Those are just the major things that need to be done. So we also want to keep an eye on our reserve.
Yeah, one of the.
Can I just clarify, Dave, your question? Are you saying that in our current budget, in our
And
The one we're working in right now
Mhm.
has a line item for about 350,000 that we were using to either pay a bond or pay repairs, which we've used some of. So we're not increasing next year's budget by that amount because it's already there. Is that your question?
Right.
Okay, I
What
just wanted to
hoping
make
would
sure.
be is that we would be able to pay the bond out of the 350 that we have.
Right.
And there's some legislation changing, well, it's actually not changing, it's enforcing what you can keep in reserve. You can't keep money in there more than 5 years. And it does come down to, they talk about this at FASBO, whether or not you can put it in your budget and put it in there, or you have your taxpayers vote on it and put it in there. So they're watching more the things that are coming out of your budget and going in there, which is how the practice that we've always had. So I think we need to rethink that a little bit.
Yeah, see, what we used to do with ours, which protected that money a little bit more, was when we had surplus at the end of the budget year, we would literally put it on the March vote and say, community, we are asking you to set this money aside in a facilities reserve fund so that it can only be used for facilities repairs. Once they vote that in there, the state can't change legislation and reach out and take it because the taxpayers voted for it to be used for that purpose. But if you're just kind of rolling it over the way that you're doing, it's possible that they could say, yeah, you know, to bolster the education fund, we're going to take everybody's reserves that we can. So just some thoughts out there. And so we go back down to the last two columns, and again, these are not recommendations. It's just showing you the magnitude of change that is going to be required if you want to move your tax rates. So if we transition this district to one school, what would happen is your tax rate would be $1.86. So it's still a 19-cent increase over the previous year. So that $500,000 home, right, their taxes would be $9,300, which is a $950 increase over what they paid in the previous year. If we tuition all students out, so that includes all elementary as well as all high school bound students and middle school bound students, as you're already doing, the tax rate would go down to about $1.51. And our numbers are a little off because I used a different value than you did for the student tuitions. You would see a decrease in the tax rate, and that $500,000 home's taxes would be $7,500. So they'd see a reduction of $850. But the problem with tuitioning out is, right, those tuitions are jumping by leaps and bounds each year right now.
And we have no control over it.
And you have no control over it.
And there is not, as far as I'm aware, there's no announced tuition for, like, there's a high school average, that 19,774. There's not one for elementary school. So we would be at the mercy of whatever we have to schools take. Well, so too. But I don't know if there's many private or.
Yeah, there's nowhere that could absorb all these kids.
And again, not recommendations, just trying to get people a view of, if we make these major changes, this is what would be required to get a small or a medium or a significant change in terms of people's taxes. Hopefully this made a little bit of sense this late in the evening. Questions on this at all?
Yes, it seems to me like just for clarity for folks watching, the one school contingency, I guess, isn't that sort of artificially deflated? Because any scenario with one school, wouldn't that require a fairly substantial capital investment in the building that is used for the one school?
Yeah, so this does not include any improvements. This is just what it would cost to do the operational side of things, right? Because right now you got two roofs that need to be replaced. So that's a significant cost. It's not a part of this. It's a good question. I'm going to turn it over kind of to the board a little bit between now and January, because in January we're going to have to vote a budget. Are there specific scenarios that you want us to work out to say what the tax rates will be? Do you want to just say, Lane and Cheryl, make your best recommendation? How do we want to proceed for the next time that we meet? What information is important? The other thing is that if it's required, it might make sense, depending upon the discussion here in a minute or two, is that, we might need a special meeting just to have enough time to take a look and refine between now and the January vote discussion. I get to stop talking. And I get to go out and cry.
I think maybe that, Lane, this is a good time for me to chime in. So when the board thinks about the upcoming budget, we're talking a lot about bond or no bond, and the way the structure is set up now, it's not looking like a bond would be very feasible. I just want to say that Lane and I have talked about this, and the most pressing issue right now at the highest level will be the roof at Mount Holly. We would be maintaining what we have for building status with nothing else added, but I really think we should be thinking about replacing that roof at Mount Holly before we have a catastrophic failure there.
And what's the approximate cost of that?
We haven't gone that route yet, Dave, until somebody says, there's going to be a cost for somebody to come out on a project that big Vermont roofers, when they came and fixed the problem that we had, said that they could do that, but that's fairly time consuming for them to do that.
I think, Todd, doesn't EEI have an estimate that we were using?
Yeah, but that was from a few years back. I think if we were going to suggest that to the board, or the board's even going to remotely consider that, I think we should have something more definitive in price, something that would reflect today's dollars in 2 or 3 years.
And I concur with Todd. The discussion we had is that, if we're looking at a budget that's not pleasant, which is what we're looking at. If we had to prioritize, if we had to take a look at all those things that need to be done on the list, what's the most critical? And it is the Mount Holly.
Tim, I think in some ways, given that we have to do the Mount Holly roof very soon, we have to do the Ludlow roof, whether it's you push it back 1, 2, 3 years. You can't push it. Tell me if I'm wrong, Todd, but we can't push that for 5 or 10 more years, can we?
I wouldn't say 10 years. No, I would say there's a few years left. There's some, according to the infrared testing that they did, there's some wet insulation, or insulation has been compromised, but they've stopped the leaking now, so the roof is not at a real high risk, but for sure that the Mount Holly roof is a much more important. And if you ask me a second level that we should go, I think if we're looking at 2 projects, it'd be the roof at Mount Holly, and either getting it added into the budget or a loan to replace those windows on the playground side at LES.
I think, as I look at it, we have this money that we need to spend, and we can either spend it, as Lane said, a lot of it this year, or we can do a bond, right? And to me, doing a bond is much cheaper, than trying to pay for it. And as I said, if we did a $2 million bond, right? And it's even a 10-year bond, you pay, if you sell the bond after the beginning of the fiscal year, you only make 1 payment instead of 2, right? But if you make the 2 payments, it will be $200,000 in principal, and in interest, if it was at 4%, it'd be
one principal payment and 2 interest.
Okay.
So in the fall, we pay the principal and interest, in the spring we pay.
you actually have a number from one of our calculations, I don't know if you have that with you, about what the payment would be for that 15-year 4%?
If we did a loan.
Yeah, oh, that's a loan. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that while she's looking. If we do a bond, Cheryl brought up the point that you can't pay off a bond early, whereas a loan, if for some reason, we got a bunch of money from FEMA or something, or for the state to help us out, if they ever pass any kind of law that's going to have them start matching funds to do school construction.
Yeah, 2.2 million, 15-year loan, 4% interest, was an annual payment of 197,870.
So the interest on a bond and a loan are the same?
Yeah, your rates are gonna be different, but generally the bonds, well, I think we did a 15-year one, we looked at it before, which obviously makes that payment higher, but the longer you go out, the more interest that you're paying.
Right.
on it. There is, I think it's 2.25%, USDA energy loan. USDA, but it has to have a 5% energy savings. I think the windows do, from my conversation with the bond bank.
But they'd only give that rate for the money that went to the windows.
They'd only give it for the windows area. So,
And voters would have to approve that also, is that right?
yeah, because it's over, well, that's all the cost of it. It's over 4,000. We have to get 3 bids and.
Well, either way, the voters have to approve it, because either they have to approve it as a bond or they have to approve the budget that includes the loan payment, so yes.
Yeah, being that it's like, it's federal funding, we need over.
Yes, I mean, so as I said, I mean, I would push for more information on the bond because it's gonna be a lower tax rate if we do a bond than if we don't do a bond. No, because we have to fix the roof. Right, and so we either pay for it this year to fix the roof, or we pay it over 10 or 15 years to fix the roof.
And since the money's already in the budget, it's not like adding anything to the budget to pay off the loan. This is the logic I think.
That's the logic I'm pushing forward, and I'm not the financial director, but.
That's up to you guys.
I mean, but it seems to me, I mean, that aside from the issue of the bond, if we go out there with an increase of $1.2 million, and that's even before the reserve, so it's really an increase of $1 million. Say, even if we took the whole 180,000 of remaining reserve, there's still going to be just a huge tax increase, as Lane's numbers were saying. I mean, I think we have to look at our staffing. We have 2 schools that each have about 60 kids in grades 1 to 6, right? Give or take a couple of students. And the question is, how many classroom teachers do we need to teach 60 kids? Our guidelines said the ratio between 13 and I think we say 18, students per teacher. And I would suggest that each of those schools would have to have 4 teachers for grades 1 to 6. Sorry?
That's what Ludlow has right now. Sorry, I'm speaking out of turn, but we've been down that path.
I mean, it seems to me that if we don't do something that seems drastic, right? And then there's no way the voters would give it to them 10 times and they still won't approve it. An increase of a double-digit percentage increase in taxes.
What is the percentage increase as it was in your second or third slide, or whatever that was? Sorry. I thought it was 5.9 or something.
Oh, that's what the governor was estimating the average increase.
Yeah,
for
for the
us.
state.
Right. Ours was going from about 20%, from 165 to 202, right?
The tax rate.
The tax rate, right?
Yeah, so they're calculating that. Come out with the same number, but they're calculating that a little bit differently this year. So I don't have it as cleanly as we've had it in the past. You're also beyond the excess spending threshold.
So we
That tax rate is actually a little bit more like 206 with the penalty that's being added.
What would it be? What would the number look like that would get us below the threshold in a little bit of comfort?
So you'd have to, so it's at 159 times the 618 would be $90,000. You'd have to cut in order to get below the threshold.
So that would be, not hiring, based on the budget that we proposed, if you didn't hire those 2 teachers, that would be a close to $250,000 savings. The new teachers that we were proposing.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear Cheryl. I think we have on Zoom, we have a hard time hearing her when she's not talking like in the direction of the screen. Can you repeat your last comment about how much we would have to cut to get under the excess spending threshold?
For $90,000.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
90,000. I'll use my teacher voice, sorry.
Well, we're a ways away from the microphone. That's probably why we're-
I can cover that distance. Go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate being able to ask this question, but Lane, in September, you had given a presentation about kind of like generally about education funding in the state. And you made a comment that maybe I misinterpreted, but I took it to mean, we almost punish ourselves by cutting and cutting and cutting to get down to a certain rate, because ultimately it's going to be the spending of all the other districts that drive up our tax rate too. So how do you hit a happy medium?
The only way taxes are going to go down is if the majority of the districts are cutting, right? Because we all pay for each other. So if a third of the districts are cutting and 2/3 of them are raising, everybody's taxes are going up. And this isn't even talking about the CLA piece, which goes along with people's properties, which the CLA is worked into these numbers, right? The CLA is a big piece of this, and the district doesn't have control over that. So what potentially could happen this year is that, given this sort of outlook that most districts are going to see, it's possible that a lot of them will be doing significant cutting, and maybe that will cause a bigger decrease than we think, because they don't have solid numbers on everything until everybody has voted, right? And then shortly after that, everything right now is the best estimates that we have, because we don't know until all the votes pass, and the March votes.
But it's kind of a game of like chicken almost, like, well, I don't know, we shouldn't cut, if you're not gonna cut, I know that's saying, right?
Yeah, it's
CLAs have dropped 11%. They're 66% for both level and college. And they gave them rounded rates as opposed to the decimal, so they may be off a little bit. The state average is 72. So
what was the change from the previous year?
11. So we were 77 and change
Okay.
last year. We were 66.
Yeah, because the bigger that changes, the bigger tax impact.
Yeah.
Right, but
So that's
the
good.
yield also went up a little bit in part because of the statewide,
Yes.
right, I mean, no, it's a mess.
But they inflated the number of kids, which cut into the yield, so the games they play is just ridiculous.
So we have a decrease in the CLA, we have a decrease in our long-term weighted membership, and an increased budget.
A decrease in the CLA means you gotta pay more. Means the state says you're not paying as much for your properties as they're worth, so they're gonna charge you more.
You can give it this way, your property value is 60% of what it actually should be.
I have to look this in.
Yeah, so like CLA is, it's like the state tells us how much our house is worth, but after a few years and people buy and sell, the market changes, but we haven't reassessed. So our house is now technically, like, if you look at it on what we're paying our taxes versus what it's on Zillow, right? Like, they're very different. Not that Zillow is always accurate, but it's a good example. So they try to make a formula where it's not what's in our tax thing, but closer to what Zillow says, so that they can compensate for that. Is that a layman's way of saying it? I know it's not probably Cheryl approved, but
So I'm nervous, this is like a nearly impossible budget to make cuts, like, so we can cut. And
Unless you do catastrophic changes.
And discretionary that we are able to cut really isn't going to impact us all that much. It's not gonna help tax wise. And the only thing it's doing is
can you, last year, I think in between vote 1 and vote 2, for the most of the state, right, we were all in that vote. We were able to come up with a number somehow, certainly not in my brain, where we were kind of talking about what Marielle was just asking, like, where is that? Is there a magic sweet spot estimate where we can say, you know what I'm asking?
Yeah, you want
I don't know the right words, but yeah.
I can sell a 15 to 17 cent increase, knowing in heck we can sell 30 or 35.
Right.
So, you know, 17 cent given what's happening this year, we might be able to sell.
And then I have one other question, and this is not trying to stir a pot. It's truly out of curiosity. If we hadn't cut and cut and cut last year, and our budget was a little bit more, and we hadn't given away that sale price that we tried to talk about last year, would we be in a different spot right now?
Because the gap wouldn't be as big.
So, yeah. That happens every year.
You pay a price for.
Right.
we essentially gave it back to our taxpayers, and it really got us nowhere.
Yeah, because it didn't cut their taxes all that much because your CLAs.
And now we're looking at close to a 40% tax.
But it's so complicated with people to understand.
Right.
Katie looks like she has a question, she's like.
Yeah, go ahead, Katie, and then Lisa.
How I want to word it too.
Keep the swear words out, right? No curse words.
That was for this meeting.
I'm just kind of looking at the budget summary with Ludlow and Mount Holly, thinking of the proposed students in Ludlow for next year being 81, Mount Holly being 88, I think it was. Is there a way to see kind of the budgets for each school?
Yeah.
Like, kind of thinking for teacher wise and.
Go into the link on, it's on the agenda.
The budget line where that is.
Go to the TRSU website.
Yeah, the agenda will have a blue link for it. One of the things, and Cheryl can correct me if I'm wrong, though, when you're looking at student enrollments, the state's calculations, I believe, are done on a 2-year average. So it's not the change from year to year, it's the average of 2 years that they use.
What you're talking about is in the building, our long-term wage membership is another whole beast.
Does that mean it's likely to go down again next year?
Well, if you look at case numbers that are going down, and I mean, it'll probably be going to be as drastic, but.
Yeah, your enrollments do this. So you'll have years that are up, years that are down, but the trend line is about flat. I was looking at stuff.
You're projected to be about the same. Yeah. Yeah. But there's no, people moving in and out, you just have no control on it.
Can't see.
Can't predict that.
And it's our mother's line. I didn't want.
Okay, so one request I would make is to ask the TRSU board to scrutinize that side of the budget. Because, I mean, that's, 400,000, out of the $1.2 million increase, a third of it is for the TRSU, right? And
which
I know,
includes.
it's no easier over there than it is over here, I suspect, but.
But that includes special ed.
Yeah, probably what
So
percentage of it.
some of that over there is here.
Say that again?
Well, I have to do a different calculation, but it's up 8.37%, so it's $578, but that's just.
578,000, so it's about
Yes,
half of the
right,
increase.
But 164,000 of that is because of the step down that we have with the block grant. And I think we have another year or two of that because we were very high and they're trying to bring everybody down to a state average.
So as it goes down, we have to compensate for
Right.
it with the regular
So-
budget.
So only about 400,000 of that is actually a budget increase.
Lane, you just said you felt able to,
I've sold 11% increases. Just that people, it's taking the time so that people understand.
so what would that put us at? If you said 17 a few minutes ago, and I'm not like holding
17
you.
cents.
17 cents,
so-
okay.
$1.67, add 17 cents to that, $1.84.
Can you put that slide back up? Because I think there was one that was 20 cents. What's the 17 is gonna be close-ish to that in round numbers. Sorry, we're gonna end up locking all you guys again.
And Kelly, I just have a question.
Yes.
Blaine had said this is a cliff year. Is that because we cut so much and now is that the cliff? Or is this like, the future of like going up, 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 up?
You used 500,000 of one-time money, they had money sitting in reserve, to help taxpayers, to reduce the burden on taxpayers, right? It was 500,000 they didn't have to pay. You don't have that 500,000 again to spend, so it's gotta be made up somewhere, so it's gotta be added to
So
this year's.
this is a 1 year deal on that?
Yeah, that increase, that's a good way of looking at it. All right, so is it this one?
Yeah, I think so.
Let's see if I can make it bigger. Nope. Should. So that one school, no discretionary is about the 17 cent. So that's a 19 cent.
Right, but close.
Again, I'm
And then-
not recommending, it's just to show
Right.
magnitude.
And to be clear, these are numbers that we just sat at our desk.
Took our best guess right now.
Right, they're all estimates. I get that. No, I was just trying to, so in order to get to the 17 cents that you're comfortable-ish with, we would have to move to $1.86, and that, I mean, there would have to be other ways to cut the budget other than consolidating schools. It would be not hiring 2 new teachers. It would be,
Cutting.
Yeah. so what would the actual number be?
You want to work backwards into it?
Yeah, sorry.
So we
I don't know if I can do that on the fly.
It was minimal, right?
Well, your 500,000, that close to 500,000 in one-time money, that's adding 10 cents to this. So if that weren't there, right, your 202 would be, $1.90. Because we've got to make up for that $500,000 from that one-time money. That's adding 10 cents to the overall tax rate.
I guess I'm asking, and maybe you've already said this in a different way, but I guess what I'm asking is, if we're looking at getting to 17 cents, what dollar number do we need to cut?
I need to play around with that much, I can sit here and
Okay.
figure that out.
Well, I know I could, so you're better than me. Is
So
that
there's a $50 change for every penny, $50 change in somebody's tax rate for every penny. 425,000. Yeah, I could probably figure it out. I couldn't do it here. But yeah, we can figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that
So your target tax rate would be like $1.86.
$84.
ish, yeah. I mean, I'm just going by this magic 17 cents Lane came up with. I mean, if it were 18 cents,
He could do it.
right?
No, but
If we, hocus pocus said it was 18 and we could sell that, great. If it was 16, even better. But I think this feels very, horrible, but also sort of confusing, whereas I think people are used to two things. I think people are used to hearing about it compared to your house is valued at 100,000, and people can do that math easier than, I'm a sixth grade teacher, kids don't divide. So we can multiply, we can get them to do that all day, but they don't divide. So I think that's easier for people to multiply, hey, my house is 200 or 700, and I know I can multiply by 2 or 7. So that I think would be easier for people to understand, but I also think if we have to cut 200,000, what would that look like? That's the equivalent of these 2 teachers that we would look to hire in Ludlow. If we have to cut 1.2 million, that's a very different conversation. And I don't know, it's closer to the 1.2 million.
And I guess kind of, if, like, looking at the funding of the 2, like cutting the 2 Ludlow teachers, is looking back at the enrollment of kids who are in Ludlow versus Mount Holly. And is it, could we cut or borrow from Mount Holly?
Shift, yeah.
Instead of cutting 2 from out of Ludlow's?
It would, right, it could.
Or do we also need to cut in Mount Holly? Because, they have a dozen fewer kids because the big 6th grade graduated. And now there are only going to be 60 or 62 kids grade 1 to 6. And, what's the right number of teachers for 60 kids?
We need to look at like shifting within
So
both
then
schools.
Mount Holly's numbers might look very similar to our multi-grade class.
Right. Yeah, no, it probably is true that there should be the same number of teachers at both schools. But then the question is, what is that number of teachers that it should be?
We started, like, we had gone back and we started looking at like what people felt, kids, teachers, parents felt about the multi-grade classrooms. And it seemed that we were all really on the page because we don't have the curriculum to really support it. Yes, they do their best, but it doesn't sound like we have it. That we were trying to have at least 1 teacher per 1 grade. So to save very little itty bitty money or percent to not hire 2 more teachers, like, I get it. I'm voicing out what I felt like we were.
You're gonna be one of many people who voices the same thing, absolutely.
In the beginning, it felt like we were talking about like
Quality education.
quality and right
And not cutting our nose off to spite our face because
Right.
everyone else in the state's gonna not do that. And so we're gonna do that and decimate our programs and our taxes aren't gonna go down. Which is what we learned last year. And we just don't have confidence that we can explain such a stupid ass system to average people.
It's true.
Hey.
I think
Well,
we-
I mean,
I think it's on that
Let's do some
way.
serious outreach, and get to the key
Well-
people. There are a few people
It is
that
awesome.
sway the town votes.
Yeah, but if I could go out and say something like, yeah, it's a horrible year. You're looking at a significant increase. You're looking at 17 or 19 cents, but every other, district across the state is at 30 or 35 cents, and that's what they're pushing for. We'd be tax gods. I mean, just by comparison.
And we would have to explain what we did last year, which is we cut severely and it
Yeah.
didn't help us.
With good intent. I mean,
Right,
There was good
we
intent.
thought we were doing the right thing.
Well, you were forced to.
Right.
You were
Yeah,
forced
the
to.
town
It
wasn't even that
Approve the
wanted
budget.
what you wanted to do. You were forced to do
And I
it
think
because of
many of us
budget.
knew we were biting our nose.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what we're looking for
I don't think
right
it's-
now is direction. I think it would be appropriate, and I'm speaking for myself, I think it would be appropriate to see what the scenario would look like in the magic 17 number, whether it's a recommendation or just a, whoa, this is not something the community wants.
I would like the TRSU to take a look at their part of this, because like they say, 1/3 of ours of it.
I
something
don't
like
know the
that.
number, but yeah.
because there's like no discretionary cutting. Like we can cut and cut and cut, and literally it's not going to do anything for anybody at this point. And I like how Julie said this. Those numbers are like artificially deflated at the bottom because it's not considering the cost to update at least one school to make sure it's compliant if we were to do one school. And we can't control tuition. And it sounds like it's, other schools are going through the roof, so.
And we never saw
we have
any
no
tax
control over
savings
that.
when we closed them.
There's no room in
Yeah, and that too,
Yeah,
like we
that's-
had
there was
huge,
something.
I remember when we had, big assemblies or town meeting in the gym, and, we all talked about the scenarios. Well, what if we designate Mill River, designate Green Mountain? What if we do school choice? And the feeling I got was if we have to close, school choice is where it's at. And like I used my son's class last year, only like 3 kids go to Green Mountain. And to be married to Green Mountain, I'm sorry, I can't support that. Mount Holly's in Rutland County, the spread is too big.
Yeah, no, I mean, we were all aware.
Since it's
It's been a lot of
PTSD,
years.
no, that's why PTSD from that.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Julie.
Yeah, so I guess what the information I need is I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around how the capital projects impact the calculation we're talking about. Because, I mean, in terms of the Mount Holly roof, like to me, that's not a discretionary, luxurious item. And so it seems, based on our experience with the bond last time, I just think we have to have a plan for how we're going to pay for that as we consider the current year budget. So like a more concrete thought, I guess, on that would be helpful to me.
So when you were,
Right, I think it's a lot easier to sell a 10% increase if we say, and by the way, we're fixing both roofs, right? Included in that cost. And that if we don't fix the roofs, then we have to close the schools in some number of years.
Increases and fix the roofs, they do all.
You're already at
So 20, if you paid for it in 1 year, a 20-cent increase would pay for a roof.
I'm sorry, I'm really trying to piece this together. So you mentioned like the penalty for like overture. So if
It's a suspended.
so if we need you need an emergency fund. Like regular old people need an emergency fund. Your boiler goes, you need something, right? So same with schools. But if like right now we're triaging everything. So if it's like kind of outside of the budget, separate, is that what you were talking
Cheryl, I
about?
thought she's got a good question. I thought the change in the law when they put back the excess spending threshold, my understanding was going out to bond and paying on bonds was included in. It's not like that money's not counted towards your.
It's counted towards your.
Yeah, it is or it's not. Yeah, that's what I thought. So any money that we go after to repair it, whether we go out for bond or just put it in the budget, it's still going to count towards potentially pushing us over that.
So can we just ask the town on a separate thing, like, hey, this is to fix the roof?
Well, so the roof alone is going
You wanted the town, that's it.
If this were Marlboro, I could get somebody to do a donation.
I mean, what I'm hearing though is that the roof alone will put us over the it'll put us at 20, like if it, like everything being level funded, so $1.2 million reduction on the budget, just the roof will put us at the spending threshold. Is that right?
I guess I don't understand.
If we pay for it in 1 year, yes.
I see.
Threshold.
Okay. So if you spread it out over a bond, it's however much you're paying in each year.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
But so make sure I got this right. You're saying that we're already over the threshold, just not even considering the repairs. Yeah.
But if we go, what David is talking about is that we use some of that 350,000 that we have in the reserve for the bond payment.
I guess what I would ask, following up on what Kelly was saying, ask the administration to come back to us with a list of what it would take in order to get down to the 17-cent number, right? And so that instead of talking abstract, like we're looking at real things, and if possible, you give us some things that add up to more in reductions, and we can say, all right, this one, and that one, right?
I think the problem you're going to hit, and let's see if I can explain this so that it makes sense, is the idea that with a small school, there is a skeleton crew of people that is required for it to operate within the regs. And so that skeleton crew may be larger than will allow you to get the cuts that you want. Not to mention impact on teacher morale and, because we don't know what's going to happen in 2 years. I've seen a lot of districts that they'll change their staffing every year depending upon which way the budget wind's going. They're not nice places to work. So just some thoughts there. But the skeleton crew alone, my guess is what we have to have just to meet the state regs. You may not be able to cut enough staff to get the money. I don't know, but we'll find out.
Right.
Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You need to heat the house whether you're in it or not.
Yeah.
Right. About $1 million cuts.
Even if we cut the teachers we added and Mount Holly right size to match our staffing numbers.
Yeah, $500,000 savings.
It's about $500,000. It's not that higher number.
Right.
That's minimal compared to the overall budget.
Might be able to explain, hey, we can't do better than this given our current physical structure. Right? We cut everything we can without violating.
I'm going to say it out loud because there are going to be people who are in the camp of we've got to educate our kids. This is the way we want to do it. One teacher per grade in both schools, all of that we talked about at the beginning of the meeting. There's going to be another large camp of people that's going to say, close one of the schools, Ludlow's big enough, send them all to Ludlow. And that's the reality of what people are going to say. Don't fix Mount Holly, just fix Ludlow. And I'm not a proponent of that. I'm not going to say that, but there are people out there who are going to say that, and they're going to ask those questions at some point. Unfortunately, the point where people come and ask the questions is always after we've approved the budget, right before they go to vote. And so that's our dilemma. We don't know where the bigger camp of people is going to fall. And I think somehow we need to predict. I don't know how we do that.
Well, if the budget fails the first time, then we make changes and go after it again. That may be the process that we have to use.
Well, or if we say we're going to have 2 meetings between now and final approval of the budget, then maybe we develop 2 scenarios at our next meeting, one with a bigger increase and one more like 17, and publicize it big time before our next meeting and say, all right, here are the basic options that we're thinking about. Come talk to us about them.
Yeah, I can do that at the open forums. What's the drop dead date in January for them to have voted their budget?
Yeah, and I think it'd be big just to get the education out there to everybody. So you know how social media works. And how the open forums.
We've got our test for tomorrow.
How the open forums, or have not work, how many people actually attend there versus be will go behind their computer on social media.
I think it would also, and this is not a budget conversation, but I really think, and we talked about this last year, and then we sort of get in the trenches and don't go anywhere with it. I really think the schools and the district need to have a social media presence where they're putting out the good things that we're doing. We don't do that enough. I know the Mount Holly PTG puts out a few things here and there. I think I belong to a Ludlow PTG page that I don't see anything much from. There are a couple of groups in Ludlow that I can see and a couple that I've been blocked from. May or may not have irritated the wrong person, I don't know. So I don't see everything, obviously, but other people are seeing one-sided information probably as well. And I think if we put out, I know other districts that put out a lot of, good things that are going on, pictures of, ski trips, pictures of field trips, pictures of jump bands, and the community can see all of the wonderful things that we're doing. Staff spotlights, get to know the teachers, get to know the things. Those are real people with real faces, with real kids doing real things that people, I think, are much more willing to understand and pay for and feel good about where their money's going. And I don't think we do that enough. And I know we're, again, in the 11th hour, and I'm saying it again, but I think that needs to, I think putting effort into that will save us headache.
Fremont has an outreach. They do.
And I think we talked about that at one point. Yeah.
I think they just do right now one thing after each board meeting, just give the highlights.
I think it's important though for the kids to be on, I get that. The board to outreach is important as well, but I think seeing kids and student of the month and sports pictures and whatever it is that you're all doing is important too. And that would have to come from the schools themselves or the district. And you'd have to have one or two people who are posting it. I don't want I don't want it to turn into a place where there's a lot of negativity, but if one or two people were posting positive things that the school is doing.
Yeah, I talked to third and fourth graders today, I think, when they had donations for the Spring Cleaning Society.
Yeah.
And went down and delivered it today and hung out with the puppies and things like that.
No, I mean, and for
So
old,
you get a lot of people.
Right, yeah.
for old fashioned people, there ought to be something in the chit chat every month, that the school did. And something in the journal, which gets more, and that's the only Ludlow, physical paper, is that right? Yeah. But if every week or two, there's something in the journal talking about something good that the school has done,
Right, I think if we bite off a smaller, bite off something each, whatever, we can hit the journal, we can hit the chit chat maybe, but social media, it's a huge public presence and is fairly simple, I would think. Lane, do you feel like, and Cheryl, that you have a direction? Do you want more input? What are I don't want to.
We'll figure it out. But again, that people have to, I think, recognize a couple of things to get down to that 17 cent mark. That's a catastrophic. There's going to be catastrophic
But I think people need to
ideas.
see that too. I don't disagree with you, and I'm not going to support it necessarily. But I think the public watching these meetings and whatever needs to know that that's going to be catastrophic.
Yeah, the changes are the district will look completely different than it has if the things that we're going to have to suggest. So.
When is it that the budget needs to be done by?
January 24th, so you have to vote on it by then. There's a certain amount of time people have to be aware of it before the vote.
So it'd be worth we have a meeting in between the next one.
Well, you probably don't have time in between the next one, just because of the holidays. And you're the second,
I mean, it's the
Wednesday,
8th.
which is the
The
8th.
8th is our regular meeting.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
with negotiations, our calendar is pretty full. So we might want to try to schedule a meeting tonight.
Yeah. Can we do that at the end? Okay, I was just trying to keep us moving a little bit.
Can I make one more comment before I move on? I feel like this has been my position for the last few budget cycles. I would very much like the district to make decisions about what it believes is in the best programmatic interest of the school community. So we've been talking, a sort of running theme this school budget year has been a question about class sizes and equity between the two schools, and the different models that we have within the same district for the same age populations. I believe the district is the expert in determining what best serves our students. And to me, I feel very committed to that mission. And I look at, the presentation that Deb gave at the beginning of the meeting tonight that showed, sort of the teachers' reaction in the Ludlow building, at least, to what they think, their opinion of, what model serves our students best. And I always will support the excellence of our district and, providing the best education that we can to our students. I also I can't predict voter behavior, and I guess some of my colleagues on this board have been doing it longer than I have, and so maybe you all can. But to me, I want to start from a place that maintains the integrity of the educational mission. And so that is my perspective here, and you will have my vote on a budget that is well-founded on those concepts.
We can do that. Like I said, we can go after larger, see what happens, and then if it doesn't pass, then we come back to the table. Because you never know what you're right. You never know what the voters are going to do.
No, and I think we're more apt to get to where Julie is talking about if they know what the opposite end of that spectrum looks like. Yeah. That's my point. Yeah.
I do think I'm looking at the articles now, and the articles agreement, I believe it has to be a town vote in order to close the school.
I'm sorry.
Say that.
Yeah.
A town vote in order to close the school.
Yeah.
Looking for it, but I don't see it quickly.
So that brings us to the bond discussion.
We kind of we'll bubble it into the.
To that, yeah. No, I mean, I agree, unless there's any more out there, which I think we've hit it. Good. TRSU policy governs adoption. Is that governance with a typo?
Yeah.
I thought so.
So that was something that was brought up at the other meeting because the TRSU board was looking at voting to convert to policy governance. And then the question, which was a good one that Julie brought up, was, hey, we should go back and since we're representatives to the TRSU, we should have some advisement from our own boards about, what they think the TRSU should do. And so she wanted to kind of open up that discussion about that, what people were thinking, should the TRSU, her as the representative or other folks that are representatives, if they'd be voting for that or not. From my perspective, I've worked under policy governance. There's a lot of benefits to it if it's done right. I did not find it very satisfying, to be honest. It ended up being kind of me by myself the entire time. Never got any feedback input from the board. When things were happening in the district or work needed to be done, it was just me by myself. And after 7 years, I did not like that. One of the reasons I decided it was time to move on. I have actually enjoyed working under the structure that folks have because it feels like we're in it together. But by the same time and same token, as boards can change, right? And so, the 2 or 3 years from now, we don't know who's going to be on the board, if there's agendas, and policy governance does provide protection in that aspect. It keeps things a little bit more honest, a little bit more ethical, a little bit more just collaborative. People kind of understand their roles, and so they're not stepping all over everybody. So, general thoughts.
Julie, did you have thoughts?
Yeah, thanks. And it might be useful, actually, Maria, if you're willing to give us some feedback and reaction about the day that you spent on the policy governance question, because it came up a little bit at the retreat back in whenever that was, July or August. But I did not have the opportunity to go to that additional session. So if you don't mind sharing, that would be great.
Yeah, Julie, it was actually great because it was inspiring, and it was something that I think we all should take the class, and all of us as board members need to do. So that I'm glad that I spent the day doing it, and I know that it's also available online. I think that's what we were told. So if everyone does it, I think it's beneficial. It's important for us to have done that. So, it's good to do.
And so from what I understand, and Lane, correct me if I'm wrong, there are like two potential scenarios here, right? Like the LMH board could decide that we want to adopt a policy governance model. Second option is I have some direction from this board about whether, or in Kelly too, about whether we ought to make a vote on that question at the TRSU. I think of them as like two different things, because it would be possible for TRSU to adopt policy governance, but for LMH to continue in our same format. Correct?
I think when we talked about it originally, we sort of said, if TRSU goes in that direction, we'll let them be the pilot program. We'll see how it works for a couple of years, and then we'll sort of start talking about it at this board again. I don't know if people have changed their mind. I haven't necessarily personally changed my mind, but
Lane, how feasible do you think that is for TRSU to be policy governance, but LMH not?
I think it could work. It'll change, I think, some of the nature of the conversations between the boards, right? Because the TRSU board would be responsible, it is right now, for my evaluations. And one of the things I think that they're looking for policy governance for is to be able, because it's got a good model for evaluations. So your conversations with them would have to include, some of the policy pieces they should have, so that you're getting what you want in terms of the work that the central office is doing for this district. And so you'd have more conversations about what you're looking for in terms of goals from the superintendent, from the central office, so they could incorporate it.
Do people have input for the TRSU board on that topic?
I agree with your approach. I mean, it looked like it was a lot of work for the board members to do all the training and adopt that process. And I'd personally rather not do that work, at least not until I've seen in a few years, if we see that it makes a big difference, and then I'd be more ready to. But right now, I'd prefer not to.
Does that help you, Julie, when go to TRSU?
Yeah, I mean, should we take a vote on whether the LMH supports TRSU adopting policy governance, and then I'll know what the representative vote ought to be? I mean, you're on it too. Kelly, aren't you on it too?
What's that?
Aren't you on TRSU also?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
I understand.
Right, I mean, and I don't know, Katie's looking at me like, I don't understand either. I don't know about the other Katie. Do you have a strong opinion one way or the other? I mean, I think, I just don't know that people are feeling comfortable to vote right now I'm reading the room. I know you're not here and that's hard.
Yeah, I don't know enough to make an informed vote on that right now.
Where is it that like the educational business online?
You can do it through,
That'd be helpful.
There's I think you're gonna mention
yeah,
the brown dog.
the words.
If you want, I can try to send a link to you. It's like a 10-hour course that you can take on it. It's actually pretty good. And I'll remember to do that tomorrow.
And there's also a board meeting from September, maybe, if you went back, the lady came and did like a little infomercial for it. And you could watch that and that would give you some information too. So I think the consensus is that people aren't, oh, sorry, Jimmy, I didn't even ask you.
I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think, I'm just, again, reading the room, I feel like people are unsure and so take that for, your own feedback, I guess. Okay. TRSU board, so we currently have some open positions that we've left open because we didn't have board members. So if we could take a minute to volunteer-ish. We do have one, Dave and I are on the facilities committee. There's an open spot there. That's a fairly simple one. It does require a couple meetings here and there. Anybody feel hopeful to join that committee?
How many committees do you expect people to join? Looking at this kind of like.
There's a lot of spaces.
Feel the spot, yeah.
I think we all can recognize that we are all very busy and we all have lives and our own personal lives have to come first. The transportation committee, I don't know how often that meets. I've never been on that one.
It hasn't met since I've been on it.
There you go. So you might want to join that one, Katie.
Kelly? Sorry, I don't know if you can hear me.
Sorry, Maria's got her hand.
Sorry, I don't know if you could hear me before. So I did join the facilities committee a couple months ago. My name's not on the thing there.
Yeah, Jamie, I'm sorry.
I only went to, I think, 2 of those meetings a while back before I joined, but I did decide to join a couple months ago.
All right. And Jamie, you've been going to the policy committee. That one does.
So have I.
That one, so have you? Okay. That one does meet more often. I'm sure it's riveting to talk about policy and tweak and wordsmith and am I selling it yet?
They do that at work.
It'd be better if something brought.
What's that?
Listen, it'd be better if something popcorn or something.
Right. But we do have a spot for that one. The support staff bargaining unit, Dave and Julie are currently on it,
I said it would be helpful to have a third person.
Right.
Because if, every time we meet with them, we need to have a quorum.
Right.
Right? The meetings will be roughly once a month or every 3 weeks or so for the next several months, and then it'll go away for 3 years.
Right.
Depending on the length of the contract.
Right, that's right. But if we do a 3-year contract, then
Maria?
I just want to say, so yesterday, not yesterday, it was the day before yesterday, I zoomed in on that meeting just, to hear a little bit of it. And that was the support staff bargaining. Now, I know Dave and Julie were there. It was a Zoom meeting, but Jamie and Jen's names were on that agenda, not Dave and Julie. So that confused me too. It threw me off as to
Probably me messing things up.
Or are you in teacher bargaining versus a support staff? Because there's a difference.
Right. It was Monday's Zoom meeting that was 5:45. That was with Dave and Julie, not Jamie and Jen. They weren't there, but their names were on the agenda instead. So I don't know. I just got confused as to who was actually on that committee.
So who is currently listed for support staff bargaining is Dave and Julie.
So are you saying we need an alternate, Dave?
Either an alternate.
Right, we're supposed to have a third
Or
member.
I see.
Third member, either way.
I'm happy to fill in wherever the need is greatest, whether that's the support staff bargaining unit or the policy committee. It sounds like probably the support staff bargaining unit needs.
Okay, can I put you down for support staff?
Yes.
I'm doing KK just because we've got a double name here. Then teacher bargaining, Jamie, you've been going to that or not? And they're not in a bargaining year? We are, that's what I thought.
The first meeting is January 7th.
So we need 3 people for that. You are, Jen. Okay, so teacher, so it's Jamie.
They've scheduled some meetings already at 4:30. Jamie,
I can't even like call at that time because I have to drive through.
Right.
Evansville.
How often are those meetings?
So we have like 3 of them scheduled.
Every other week.
Not every other week.
That could be in a short period of time and then they go away for
Yeah.
That's the.
I was like 4:30 work for me.
It would or would not.
It would.
What? Try that? All right. Yay. All right.
So
Then-
do we still need a third though?
No,
So we have Dave, Julie, Katie, and then Jamie, Jen, Katie.
But Jimmy can't.
Oh, right. Right, you can't.
But there's only 2 because there's 2 from the Green Mountain side and there's 2 from.
So you could be the alternate and hope that if we need you, it's a later meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're usually around 6.
No, that's right.
4:30.
Oh, that's right. We did change that group.
With what?
No, because it's teachers
bargaining.
No,
That should be
No,
fine.
yeah.
I think on both of them, the attorney does most of it.
Yeah.
The attorney, Cheryl and Lane, do most of the work. But we need to be there because it's the board that in the end will make the approval. And I think probably our biggest role is to be ready to come back to the whole board and say, all right, either here's where we are or here's where we have a question. I don't feel like I'm pushing for anything in particular.
Right. So that brings us to transportation, which is currently Dave. That's one that, I mean, I'm happy to throw my name on it. 'Cause
I think it's okay, if we have an issue come up, we may look for
Right.
volunteers, but
Right.
around a particular issue, but,
Under policy governance, all this would go away.
Right. And then food service is Maria and I currently, and it's another one that meets once or twice a year, and it's pretty basic and simple, and you want to join that fun? All right. All board members, superintendent evaluation, that's a whole different ballpark. And then there's a tuition committee that is currently a committee of Kelly. It's not, and we're not really, that was sort of when we were doing. Okay, so if we need it, we'll, all right.
But the burning question is the tier issue, right?
Yeah, why isn't that on there?
It's up at the top and down there.
Oh, yeah, but it should be on that chart, no?
It's not on the chart, but.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha. I was gonna say that the principals too, if you guys want. It's early to tomorrow and whatnot.
I know, I was getting a lot of teacher messages and I was hoping there was a snow day, but there's not.
Yeah, there's nothing else on the agenda.
All right, so TRSU rep, would like to join Julie and I at that fun, because that is an important one. It would be another meeting a month plus random specials that don't generally happen at the moment.
And it's not the same week as our meeting. They go the first Thursday, right? The first Thursday?
Yeah, first Thursday, and then we meet 6 days later generally.
We're the second Wednesday. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
I say I would join if there's any conflict, so.
Okay, yeah, it shouldn't, all
That
right, so Katie,
would just be my concern.
Usually good to just recuse yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's,
TRC with your gap.
Or TRC with Mom and Chester.
Yeah, but TRC should not affect.
yeah, right.
Okay.
So-
Perfect.
And I sometimes have family that I do recuse, but it doesn't come up often, so.
And Zoom participation is always an option for TRSU as well.
And remind me, just because I always mess this up, TRSU is 3 members, no alternate? Or do we need an alternate as well?
I think Green Mountain has an alternate.
Right, that's what I always thought, so.
Yeah, we have an alternate. I was the alternate last year.
For a while, right,
Yeah.
right. So do we have somebody who would be willing to step in case somebody can't go?
I could be an alternate.
Okay, so Dave is the alternate. All right. Then we have policies, first read, internal student transfer. That is in our packets. It's something that we have. Do we want to, do people have questions about it? Because there's a lot of new people here tonight. I'm also looking at time and want to be honoring people's lives.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we can kind of read through it and have a list of questions for next time where our meeting might be less meaty because we'll have a budget meeting after also.
I really appreciated the changes. I think they addressed perfectly what I criticized about the informality of the former system. The only thing was that I noticed some of the dates throughout the policy were not current. Like if we are updating it to reflect, it's going to go into effect for the 24-25 school year, I think we should update. There was reference to it's 2021.
I'll go back and look.
Starting the fall of 2021 school year, right under Article 1.
But I appreciated that the edits removed any role of the board in voting on that process and that the final appeal was with the superintendent. Those were my main aims with that policy.
Oh, that's why, that's actually a good point, because I read it as that was just saying when it was established, not that it was a changing date, because it was established in the fall of 2020, 2021. So it's not a necessary date at all. It seems to just be saying, the first year that you guys were entering into an agreement about this.
Right.
So I may have read that wrong or interpreted it wrong. Yeah.
Either take out starting and put in established or something like that, to make it clear.
Gotcha.
So we'll bring that back for a second read and closer examination, because it should be adopted in time for it to be put out to the public before the dates, not the lottery dates, but
application.
Yeah, thank you. That's the word I needed. So then it brings us to committee reports, TRSU. I was not able to go. Julie, you went?
It was, there was discussion mostly about the budget is my memory. And then also the policy governance question. And I guess I will say, it's related to the earlier discussion, but I guess it's fairly also an update. My perception, we should not have any illusion that there is all this stuff to cut in the TRSU budget. That is the vast majority of that budget is non-discretionary special education. A very tiny part are other essential, central office functions. I would not expect that number to change, is my takeaway after watching that presentation.
Thank you.
Can I also add a little bit, is that they're looking to start, and this budget includes 2 starting junior programs at Green Mountain. to bring kids back that are out of district. It cuts costs. It also cuts our extraordinary costs that we get. So it was like a $500,000 cut out of the budget. Unfortunately, it didn't help with the assessment because of the way the funding came with that, but yeah, so it's exciting to bring the kids back to the business.
And there's an important point about that is that when you build a program like that, it's saving you money that you don't have to spend, so you don't see the impact on the budget.
Right.
So it's, yeah.
Policy committee. Yeah, and there's no new policies in here other than our internal transfers. So, facilities committee, we talked about the bomb stuff. That's where we're at with that. Policies approved at this meeting, none. Public comment.
I do.
All right.
For your food committee, we, as part of the EPIC grant that Lisa wrote, we put in two presentations from Scott Noyes for the community. One is feeding the developing brain, and the second is sleep, helping children develop a healthy sleep pattern. That would be open for the community. But I would really love the food committee to join. I think it's really vital that we're paying attention to what we're feeding our children, and it absolutely affects their day, it affects their brains, it affects their learning, it affects so much, and sleep as well. Just as a food committee, sort of paying attention to what the best practices and guidance on that.
Is he coming?
Yes.
When's he coming back?
Well, I want to get a little feedback from that. Like, I know he's got like a lot of budget meetings and all that, and he's available on certain times. But I'm gonna have him I'll have him twice for just our parents, and we'll choose some topics. But this is to the EPIC grant, so this will be open to the community.
Did you just say it was Scott?
Yeah.
Scott Noyes?
Yes.
I went to Bob, right?
Oh yeah, you did. I'll put it out to the parents of, I do pre-K to 2 on that one, later on, but this one will be for everybody.
Nothing dead or dying and rotting food or something in your bedroom. That's like all I can think about. I think to clean their room, they'll shut their door.
That's right. No power struggles about the messy room, right? It's nothing dead or dying in there. Not your business. So I don't know what's, he's available certain times, but I just didn't want to it's right, you're doing I don't know that you have any of those dates in place, but like what would be like a general time that you're going to do a budget presentation to the, I don't want to mess that up. But I want participation.
Right. So, I would say, I don't know, are you asking for a date? Like,
No, just like a guideline.
I would
March,
say,
should I be doing
I was
this
gonna
in?
say, yeah. Well, who knows? Like,
I know.
February, we'll have been yep, the budget's done, and we won't know what's happening, so it's an easy month
So maybe
sometimes.
February.
Yeah.
a good time. Maybe February's a good time.
I'm speaking as one human, but,
Okay.
it might be.
No, that's good. That's what I want.
Yeah.
Because he's gonna come from the top of the state, so
Right.
once I pick a date, he's coming.
Right.
So, no, that's good. That's good to know.
And it would be an additional, it would not be part of our regular board meeting, right? It would be something
but
separate.
I think it would be really relevant to the food committee.
Yeah.
To go and just, hear what we should be feeding our children.
Right. Yeah. I get it. Okay. So February-ish.
Yeah, okay. I will let you know. I will
Thank
send you an invitation.
Yes. Before I do the food committee, Maria, Kelly, and Jen. All right. Policies at this meeting, public comments, that's where we were. All right.
Any other public comment?
Yeah, thank you. No. Regular meeting, January 8th, 6 p.m. That is our next meeting. And then we should schedule one for after that. Do you have a date in mind?
Tell you what I have open.
I have the same stuff open you do, Brian. Budget time.
The 13th and the 15th, and then I get into the following week, and I can do any day the following.
Okay, so the
13th or the 15th, just because then we still have time to do one more if we need to.
Right, why do I have, speaking, Lane, I'm just gonna say this out loud, our next planning for the agenda meeting is on Christmas, and I plan on being busy that day, so we need to reschedule.
Understood, I'll reach out. I appreciate that.
So RV, okay, I
have the 6th of January too, that's only 2 days apart, so that's a lot if we have to.
I could, you said you could do the 15th?
Yeah, I can do the 15th too.
Thank you all.
Thanks. You too.
Probably should be during.
Can we sell on the 15th?
So that would be a special meeting and
Yeah.
focus is just budget.
I don't trust September. Can you try? Yeah.
I'll try to do that, yep.
It means Cheryl and Wayne will have a busy week from the 8th to the 15th.
Person. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I was thinking actually that, our representative is a Ludlow person.
What's wrong with you? Fix this.
Well, he's due this year. We'll give him a break. We'll give him a taste. Kevin Winters.
Yes. Can we get
Second.
Kelly, not Kelly, whoever's doing that position?
Should be Lane.
Lane. Can we get Lane to do that?
Okay, so
Kevin goes to the
Kevin,
Baptist church.
Say that louder, I'm sorry.
Kevin goes to the Baptist church.
Good. He goes to the bathroom.
That's his pronoun, so I have to.
I think we all do, but sure, if you can meet him there, go for it.
So that will be in Mount Holly because we're in Mount Holly.
Yeah, in January, yeah.
Okay, so the 15th in now.
Yeah, so for you guys that are new, when the regular meeting is in Ludlow, any special meetings are in Ludlow. When the regular meeting is in Mount Holly, any special meetings are in Mount Holly, unless the special meeting pertains to that building and it's in the opposite. Like sometimes with the facilities committee, it matters. But
You'll let us know.
generally not. All right, so January 8th at 6 in Mount Holly, January 15th at 6 in Mount Holly. Board self-evaluation. We were given the materials and read them prior to the meeting. We were respectful of each other and the public and the administration. Thank you. The board members handled conflict openly and constructively. No complaints, all right. Board members focused on the roles and responsibilities of the board. And board members acted as a team. Once a decision had been made, we worked collaboratively throughout the decision-making process. All right, and I still need to write a thing for the book.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you. Anybody want to second that? All those in favor?